So if you're looking to get the cheapest price on your car insurance, and I get it, cheap and value are two different things, but let's talk about the cheapest car insurance that you can get in the US. I'm also going to go over and review some of these companies and give you personal opinions essentially, or some of the facts that I know about them to give you an idea of whether the cheap is worth the value. So let's dive in. This is actually an article I got from a company called Digital Insurance. Digin.com, I believe, is their website, but they mark these companies from 10 to 1. Number 10 is Liberty Mutual. Liberty Mutual, unfortunately, is going downhill a little bit. Great company, great people, but they're restructuring a lot of things. They're coming in at the minimum coverages, which is more just PLPD, personal liability, and property damage. That's what that stands for. It's just the bare bones coverages at about $1,090 on average per year. Now, this article doesn't actually say per year, but if it's not, then these prices are crazy. But I'm assuming it is because I looked on their website and apparently they didn't go into depth on where they got the data. So we're just going to debunk some of the things that they've gone through. They're saying full coverage is running about $3,419 per year across the U.S. on average. Coming in at number 9 is Farmers Insurance. And Farmers Insurance has actually gone downhill as far as reputation, but they're starting to move uphill as far as the business that they're pulling in. Kind of weird, because they've removed their coverages from a lot of states, or at least reduced them, but the agents are really pushing to move forward. So they're doing any and everything they can. The problem that you're going to run into is when that happens, when companies cut commissions for their agents, when they start to reduce risk, and they start to get downgraded as far as their overall structure, essentially their income that they have, then you're going to find they're going to push a lot more life insurance. Expect if you're going to call a farmer's agent that they're going to offer life insurance along with that auto quote that you're asking for. They're coming in about $1,044 per year for minimum coverages, $3,295 per year. Not horrible, not great, but that's usually a little bit better than what we're looking at. So there are a few other companies that are going to be some good fits. The number 8 spot is Nationwide. Nationwide has been a great company for us specifically and in many different states. The problem that you're going to run into with Nationwide is they don't really want a lot of business right now. They want to keep it calm and be a little bit more particular on who they bring into the door. So they've implemented a few things in most of the states. One of the things that you're going to see is if you just have one car, you're going to have to pay 70% of that bill now. Unfortunately, they also require that you hand in the registration to prove that you own the car, because it is a small issue. They also want to see photos of the car to make sure there's no damage, which is fairly rare for an insurance company. It used to be a thing back 10, 15 years when people did do a lot of fraud and they just got caught because of the photos, right? In Florida, you would have to do what's called a CARCO inspection. Same thing for the New Jersey folks. That would happen. Ohio, Michigan, Virginia, they've nixed all of that and got rid of all of that in those states. But now they've implemented that back to not where you have to visit somewhere. You can just send the photos to your local agent. The great part about Nationwide is it goes through an independent agency instead of the Farmers and the Liberty Mutual brand. Liberty Mutual and Farmers, those are direct to one person. That one person typically can only quote the Farmers and Bristol West. That's their inside brand. Can they do outside stuff if those aren't competitive? I don't know the exact rules for that, so you have to talk to that agent to find out. But from my knowledge is that's all you can get quoted. Where the Nationwide person, they usually work with 5, 6, 8, sometimes 20 plus companies to where they'll shop at not just Nationwide's information, they'll check Safeco and Allstate and Progressive and all of these different companies that they have access to. So if Nationwide's price isn't good, but they can find a similar company, they might save you some extra money in the process. By the way, if you are shopping for car insurance, I'll put a link in the description below where you can fill it out, and that'll get to one of my companies or a company that I work with that could probably help you with this same scenario. Some of them are farmers agents that are competitive in some areas. Otherwise, most of them are independent agents to where they can shop those multiple companies, where you get that advice, you get the local person, and you get to check multiple companies with one phone call. But that leads us into number 7, which is Allstate. I actually like Allstate to a point. We use them in our agency, and they actually are fairly competitive in some areas. The houses are great. Their auto is okay as far as price goes. So if you're looking for cheap, Allstate's probably not going to be the cheapest option, but they're a good company. The only thing you've got to be careful with on them is that they are starting to tweak some of their policies. So you're seeing their rates have skyrocketed over the last 6 months. On top of it, they've also changed the way that their home policies, I know this is an auto video, but on their home policies, they're starting to remove those extra coverages so that you can get a bare bones policy, but be careful because some of those bare bones policies don't cover you correctly. So talk to the agent in that specific scenario. Their pricing is $781. Reverse back to Nationwide, I apologize. Their pricing is $890 for minimum coverages, $3,046 for full coverage, where Allstate is saying $781 for minimums, $2,438 for full coverage. That pulls in number 6, who probably has dropped a few levels. It's State Farm. State Farm is really focusing on their branding piece, where they're really tied to a lot of things like football. They're big into the Kansas City Chiefs, so they're trying to promote that if you are a Chiefs fan, then you're a State Farm fan. They've got Jake from State Farm at all the games. He's connecting with all the people, and it's just cool. They got a good commercial. They've got good things happening. They've got a lot of lawsuits, so that's one of the major things. I've got a lot of videos on this channel about them because they are the largest in the whole industry, but they're not the cheapest. They're in the 6th spot. On top of the lawsuits that they have, a lot of them are for some things that I'm not a big fan of. Feel free to check it on this channel. There are videos. Just type in State Farm and Think Insurance, and you'll see what we're talking about. They're coming in at $718 for the basic bare bones minimums, and they're saying $2,627 for that full coverage option. Still not bad, but there's a lot less expensive companies that are equally great companies. Number 5, it depends on the state that you're in. This is Travelers. They're $639 for minimums, $2,536 for the full coverage. They have a really good reputation in a lot of states. They have a fairly bad reputation in other states. And then in a few select states, like the main one that I'm in, they don't offer insurance at all. They're paused, essentially. They're getting stricter on the type of homes that you're doing, so it has to be newer roofs, newer homes, things like that. But as far as the auto goes, they can be very competitive. We've had a lot of good success with them, and overall, they're a great company. They're just a little bit strict on the type of policies they want. Similar to Nationwide, they want to make sure that's clean business so that they're not losing their shirts, like a lot of these companies have in the last 12 months. That leads into one of my favorites, which is weird to say because they want to be known as a big brand, but they're known more as a mediocre brand. I don't think I said that correctly, but we'll dive in. It's Progressive. Progressive is coming in at $549, super inexpensive for the minimums, and $2,271 for the full coverage. The great piece about Progressive is they're always innovating. They want to be ahead of trends, so they're always looking forward to the next step. I've got a few videos on them, and that's the thing I love about Progressive. They're competitive. Their rates don't really shoot up that much. They've gone up about 10 to 15%, where other companies are 30 to 40%. They're also one of the largest in the nation, so you have a lot less risk of the price skyrocketing on you. The downfall is Progressive is a strict company, not so much taking in the business. They're strict on the claims that they pay out. So if you're buying a policy and you're like, oh, they'll never know about this, and I'm playing in that gray area, they don't know that the car's not registered to me or my cousin's in the house. They have rules and guidelines against that type of stuff. So be careful with that policy. Make sure you read those guidelines on that 50 page that nobody reads. They essentially state that if it's not accurate information, it could be denied as far as coverage goes. They're very successful with that, but once again, you can go through an independent agent or you can go direct. So you can go to their website yourself, buy it online. Not the greatest way to do it because now you're guessing at coverage. Or you can go through an agent, which honestly is usually the same price or cheaper. And now you've got that advice. They can tell you what isn't covered and what you should or shouldn't do with that type of policy. Overall, really good company. That leads us into number 3, which is AAA. I don't like AAA as much as I used to. I loved them back in the day, and they've really fallen off as far as technology goes. So they're way behind as far as implementing new plans. They don't have a 12-month plan anymore where most everything's a 6-month policy. They've essentially backed off as far as their technology. Most of the CEOs and the people running the company are a little bit on that older edge to where that should be retired. So it's okay. Is someone going to take care of me here? They have a model where they actually bug you when you're a customer. So your agents are coming and going and they're leaving and no one's really just sticking around. So that's one of the problems I've seen with at least our local AAA that I've seen. not a bad company because they are more pegged as the knowledge company. They really are the road service, the membership service, and they do that so that they can control the pricing more. With them, it's $529. I'll bet you that doesn't include the membership. The membership is usually anywhere from $60 to $90 a year for that as well. So let's just say $600 for the minimum coverage and $2,816 plus another $60 or $70 on top of that as well. The great part about AAA is they are credit based. So if you have good credit, make sure you know who has the better credit when you're getting a quote from them. If you do, they do work with independents, is make sure that person who has the best credit goes first. Number 2 is USAA, who used to be number 1 forever, and they actually have dropped quite a bit. Honestly, I'd put them at number 4 at this point because they have been lacking in customer service. I've got a few videos on this channel about that, and it's just nothing but comments just reiterating this is exactly what's true. This has happened to me. The service has dropped off. Maybe they're turning around at this point. I hope so. I pray that they do because they are a good company. The only downfall is you have to have served at some point to be part of them. Now, if you're part of a family member, like a grandparent or a parent, you're in. You can get into that world as well. But the question is, do you want to? Right now, you decide. Call them up, find out if the service levels are good, and maybe it's a good fit, maybe it's not. Their prices have skyrocketed quite a bit, but it's kind of things that's worth a try because they aren't that horrible of a company. They're just not the greatest at this current point. They're coming in at $487 for the minimum, $1,829 for the max. And number 1, which I am going to completely disagree with this article, you should have guessed it. If you haven't, put it in the comments below. We'll do it in 3, 2, 1. It's Geico Insurance. Oh, who wrote this article? I don't know where you would come up with. Oh, it's the cheapest insurance, right? I get it. It's not Geico's not a horrible company. Actually, I talk about them a lot on this channel. If you're younger, if you're high risk, Geico is the spot. That's the place to go. Apart from the general or direct general, as they call it, those are the 2 risk acceptance companies. So Geico is coming in at $462 for the minimums, $1,955 for the full coverage, which is more for full coverage because you'll notice that the full coverage, it's lower risk, right? The person that has a newer car, owns a home, maybe has some additional excess money, that's not usually a high risk. That person's trying to protect that, where the typical Geico customer doesn't have that. They're one car, they just bought it, they haven't driven, they had a lapse, they had a ticket, they had a DUI, things like that have happened, and Geico tends to be the best fit there. If that is you, honestly, your best bet is just to go to geico.com and fill out a quote. The unfortunate part is you'll never have an agent. So when you go to Geico, or if you even go to Progressive Direct, those 2 are the 2 companies that part of their saving and their way that they save money to cut cost is they don't have salespeople that are your agents. So they have salespeople that will sell you the policy, give you some tips and tricks. I don't know how well I would trust that, but most of it's done online. Half the time you're going to find out that Geico doesn't want to insure you anyways, and it's just going to tell you to call this 800 number. Now you got to write a letter, you got to do this, you got to jump through all these hoops just to get the quote. So if that's the case, you can understand that it's not really a fit for you either way. There you have it. Those are the cheapest insurance companies according to Insure, Digin website. I don't know about that one. I've got a video on this channel. I'll actually link my cheapest car insurance that I did a little bit deeper dive into if you want to learn more of those companies. If you are new to insurance for car insurance, you probably should start with the coverages first. I also have a coverage 101 that you should go over as well that'll help you get some advice. Like again, if you are looking for different insurance quotes, go ahead and fill out the link below. There's a link to my quote form where you can usually talk to one of my guys or somebody that I'm affiliated with. I'm Mark with Think Insurance. I'll see you in the next one.